Right, welcome to another Coach's Lounge. Today we're with Coach Chuck Bresnahan, famous with his coaching in the NFL and NCAA. Most of you guys probably know Coach from the Raiders, but we're going to talk some football today, some life stuff. And welcome, Coach. How you feeling?
Rick, I couldn't be doing better as long as I'm getting to talk to you. Makes my day.
You're very kind. Hey, Coach, let's start from when did you first realize that you wanted to coach the game?
You know, I always tell people I got the genetic defect of being the son of a coach, and I was the one child in the family that decided to follow in my dad's footsteps. But it's, I think there's more to it than just that. Of obviously growing up and being a part of football since you're a little kid definitely has an impact on your life. But I think it was just the competition, the camaraderie, all the other things that you get to witness throughout this experience of being a coach's son, that all got it started. So I really didn't know, though, that I wanted to coach until I knew I couldn't be a rock star or a movie star. You're in the Naval Academy, you graduate, you serve your time in the Navy. Well, I blew my knee out my senior year. The whole time at the Naval Academy, I wanted to fly fighter, be a fighter pilot, fly jets, do the Top Gun school, do Blue Angels, everybody's dream that wanted to be a naval aviator. That was my goal. And when I blew my knee out, I wasn't able to pass the flight physical. So everything changed at that point. And I went into the supply corps, went into aviation supply. So I was still around naval air stations, the whole thing. But I knew that it wasn't the same thing as getting to fly the fighters, and getting to be a pilot. So I started looking at my alternatives, and I knew that I always had the itch to get into coaching because I wasn't good enough to make it to the next level, to the NFL as a player. And not that I had any aspirations originally of being an NFL coach. I just wanted to get into coaching. So I got into college coaching, and that was it. But at a very young age, I knew I wanted to be involved in football. And it's just, how life changes you, based on circumstances, that blowing out my knee and having major surgery and having an 8-inch rod in my knee when we had the flight physical and I wasn't able to pass it, that changed my whole life. And, here I am today sitting talking to you.
Well, Coach, you could have doubled as Nick Nolte. You could easily have done that.
Believe me, I've been told a lot.
Coach, when you were young, what were your challenges as a coach? What was your kind of thought process and challenges there?
Well, I know it's like every young coach, if they sit back and they look in the mirror and really look at themselves in the mirror, is you always think that you know too much and that you are going to change coaching and that you're going to be this new thing because you want to aspire, you want to grow, you want to climb that ladder. So I think that it took, I had a great mentor, obviously, in my dad being a coach and all the coaches that I was exposed to through him being on different coaching staffs. But when I got into coaching, Bobby Ross, who had coached with my dad at the Kansas City Chiefs, was the head coach at Georgia Tech. And when I got down to Georgia Tech, he was almost like a second father figure. And I never forget, I still tell young coaches all the time, he would look at your product on the field, whether it be practice, a scrimmage, a game, didn't make a difference. He was always evaluating you. And for young coaches, he had to really kind of set us straight that, it's not how much you can do and throw at your players. It's how well you present it and how you are as a teacher. So learning that you had to be a teacher And I use the example all the time with say a practice drill, Rick. If you go out and you create a drill and you think that you're this mad scientist and you take 3 drills and combine them together that you think are, this new way of doing things, you have to really go back to ground one and understand that every drill has a purpose. Every drill has a starting point. Every drill has a finishing point. Every drill has a tempo. And you have to explain this to your players. And then the most important part about it, doing a drill, is that you have to be able to then to go into the meeting room and show them the clip of them running through this drill, and then pull out something from practice, a scrimmage, a preseason game, or a game that applies to what you just taught them and used up 15 minutes of time. So you have to make sure that you're able to see that this is productive. And I thought that sticks in the back of my mind, starting back in 1987, with Coach Ross. So I think it's not doing too much, and it's being a great teacher. That's all we are, man. We're teachers. We wear lots of hats as coaches, but the most important one is being a teacher. And that can be X's and O's. That can be life lessons. It could be many things, and then in order to do that, you have to be a great listener, not just always talking. So, those are some of the challenges you have to get over. And just like me, I had to get over those things and learn those things and get to be more of a refined coach and someone that really understood the triggers that you had, or I should say the trigger points that you had to hit on each individual player.
Coach, as life went on, what would you say was your first big break, and what impact did that have on you?
Again, I think first big impact was being born the son of a coach, because when it came time, everybody looks at whether it's Kyle Shanahan, whose dad's Mike Shanahan, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're associated with your dad that was in your profession, everybody kind of initially thinks that, oh, you got a break because your dad was in the game. That may have happened. That may not happen. For me, it was all about learning the game, getting to know the other people that were on the staffs that my dad coached with, and then your staffs through high school, through college, get to know them. I was blessed because I got right out of the Navy as an officer, got a medical discharge. I turned around, went right back to the Naval Academy as a full-time college football coach. I didn't do the graduate assistant or anything like that. I didn't do that program. I got very blessed because when I graduated, I worked for 8 months as what we called a TAD officer at the Naval Academy, temporarily assigned duty, working with the football team. So that next season, I basically was a GA, and I worked my butt off for Gary Tranquil, who was our head coach, so that when I got out, whatever it was, 5 years later, he turned around and hired me back as a full-time coach his last year at the Naval Academy. So I got the big break there. But, there's many big breaks in your career. That's probably the most important break. It's probably not the biggest break. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely, Coach. In terms of coaches, and yes, you had your father as a mentor, a model coach. Did you model yourself on how did Chuck Bresnahan become Chuck Bresnahan? What did you model yourself on?
I think one of the biggest things is you, and this goes back to Bobby Ross, but my dad had said the same things. But Bobby Ross, my first year at Georgia Tech, I coached on the offensive side of the ball, and I coached the tight ends. And I just remember him always telling us that whether it's one of your peers that's also an assistant coach, your coordinator, your head coach, keep a running logbook of all the good things that each one of these guys does and all the bad things, or not necessarily bad, but things that you don't agree with. And as you go, one of the most important things I've been told since day one is be yourself. And you don't want to try to model yourself after a specific person because you're not that person. So take the highlights, kind of avoid the things you didn't agree with, and then go on. And as you grow as a coach, the thing that I learned to do early on, I just took that list and I had a notebook with everything in it, man, positives and negatives on each person. The thing I didn't do was talk to that coach about the positives and the negatives. And I learned that as I grew as a coach, because that's not confrontational. If you go about it the right way, you ask for, during the off season when there's time to sit down, and it's basically a debrief, going through what you do well, what you don't do well, and you ask them, why do you do this? And you're not telling them that it's on your negative list. It's more finding out why they're doing it, because I've had things that have been on the negative list that move to the positive list because of the explanation of why they did it that way. And so I think you just have to continue to grow as a person, you grow as a coach, and you don't leave any stone unturned. You want to make sure that you're fully prepared, because you owe that to your players, you owe that to your fellow coaches, you owe that to the school or the team that you're working for. If you're in the NFL, it doesn't make a difference. It's all the same. You owe that responsibility of being fully prepared.
Coach, I know that you went from college to the pros. What was a big difference in coaching college and then to the pros?
Man, you talk about eye-opening experience, Rick. I mean, it was, I had started at the Naval Academy, gone to Georgia Tech with Coach Ross his first year, spent 5 years there. We won the national championship, or tied for it, with the University of Colorado in 1990. And then I left and went as my first coordinator's job to the University of Maine with Kirk Ferentz, and spent 2 years there. Then I left and went to the Cleveland Browns with Bill Belichick. So going through that, having won a national championship, become a coordinator at a very young age at the college level, Division I level, I thought I knew everything again. So you're going right back to the beginning, and it's kind of like a player. When you go from high school to college, you go from being the senior back to being the freshman, and you don't know anything compared to the sophomores, juniors, seniors in college. Then you graduate from college, and if you're blessed enough, you go to the NFL and you're a rookie and you don't know anything again. Well, it's the same in coaching, because I went from thinking I was a pretty damn good coach and that I knew a lot and was pretty experienced, to walking into my first meeting, and two of the guys in the room are older than me and have won Super Bowl rings. It was Carl Banks and Pepper Johnson. And the first thing they did with the old young rookie coach was started asking me questions before I could say anything. So I had to prove to them that I knew what the hell I was talking about. So it completely changes, because now it's not as much about trying to make an impact on a young kid. This is a job. This is a profession. And you're trying to get these guys to improve each and every year. Even these guys like Pepper and Carl, who have been in the league for, 8, 9, 10 years when I got them, they knew a ton more than I did about the NFL. And then the second thing is just the speed of the game. You hear people talk about that, but until you really go through that and you understand how, on a college team this year, I mean, Michigan was unique because I think they had the most guys drafted, but you may have at the most 3, 4, 5 guys on a team that are NFL caliber. You get to the NFL, everybody on the team is NFL caliber. and the tempo, the speed, the physicality, all those things, Rick, it makes your head spin. So it was really trying to just comprehend that. And again, don't, Mr. Davis, when I worked for the Raiders, Al Davis, the great Al Davis, never asked a question that he didn't already know the answer to. You had to kind of assume that players like Carl and Pepper, who were so experienced as a young coach, they were the same way. They were going to challenge you. So you, again, you owed it to them. You owed it to Coach Belichick, your defensive staff. Nick Saban was our defensive coordinator. You owed it to those guys to be fully prepared and to be able to, for those guys to feel confident that you could make them better, that you could help them reach another level in their career, whether it be week by week or year by year. You wanted to have a positive impact.
Hey, Coach, it's interesting. You bring up Al Davis from the Raiders. The Raiders had a mystique about them, and there's you going for an interview with Mr. Davis. How was that?
That was another just incredibly unique but experience that I'll never forget and just cherish for my entire life. Is John Gruden get hired as the head coach? John called me, and it was right about the time of the combine. And so they were flying. They didn't have a full staff. I think he had hired at the time Willie Shaw as the defensive coordinator, Bill Callahan as the offensive coordinator, and I think maybe Dave Adolph as the linebacker coach. So when they get to, I'm coaching at Indianapolis. I had been with Lindy Infante. So I'm living in Indianapolis. They're coming to Indy for the combine. They fly in. John sets up this meeting. So I meet John, who I knew. I meet Bruce Allen, who was the general manager. And they tell me that Mr. Davis is going to pick my brain and wants to, meet with me and all this type of stuff. And I'm getting interviewed to be the secondary coach. So we're at the combine in the old RCA Dome one day, and he comes up, or he has Bruce Allen come up and ask me to come down and sit with him. And he's sitting with Jerry Jones, and sitting right down by the 40-yard dash start. And, Al's got his towel over his shoulder, and I come down, and he introduces me to Jerry Jones. And then he hands me a stack of napkins. And he tells me that he gives me this assignment to write down all the base defenses, man coverage, base defenses, zone coverage, and 5 zone pressures and 5 man pressures that I really feel comfortable with, and that I'll present them to him at some point in time. And I'm looking, and I'm like, well, Coach, I can put this on. I'll put it on the napkins. And he hands me the napkins. So literally, I go up in the stands, and I'm leaning the napkin on my notepad, and I'm drawing all these defenses up and making notes and everything. And I finally walk back down. It's got to be 30 napkins. And I hand them to Mr. Davis, and I said, Mr. Davis, here you go. I said, I'll be ready at any point. He just completely ignored me, grabbed him, crumbled him up, and put him in his pocket. And I turn around, walk back up the stairs, and I look at Bruce and John. I said, man, I don't think I got this job. And they're like, no, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. I said, no, I didn't get a good feeling. And so 2 days go by at Indianapolis. I don't hear anything from Mr. Davis. I don't hear anything. John hasn't heard anything. Bruce hasn't heard anything. So all of a sudden, I guess it was 2 days later, may have been 3. Bruce comes up and says, Mr. Davis wants to meet with you up in his room tonight. And I said, okay. So I go up there and knock on the door. And our strength coach, Gary Guimont, answers the door. This is back when Al was healthy. Well, he rents, or was provided, I shouldn't say rents. The Indianapolis Colts provide him with a whole weight room of equipment in his room so he can work out while he's in Indianapolis, and Garrett puts him through his workouts. So I come in, and there's stuff everywhere. And so I walk into the room, the suite, and I sit on the couch and I'm just waiting. And he's in showering or something, getting changed. And he comes out and he sits down, starts talking to me. And we're talking about personnel. And I'm not talking about Raider personnel. And I've been warned about this. You had to know everybody in your division. You had to know offense, defense. You had to know who they drafted, who's the rising star, the whole thing. So he starts asking questions. I think I did a pretty good job. And then all of a sudden, he got that stack of napkins and he starts laying them out on the coffee table. And he would just point at one and say, okay, tell me about that. And you'd have to tell him. And then he'd switch back to personnel, or he'd ask you about what you think of our offensive receivers on the Raiders squad. And he would jump around. Then he'd start asking you, rules of the game. And then he'd go back and point to another one on the table and you'd have to tell him that. And so it was just, it was an experience and a half. But having known what to look forward to or anticipate, nobody could tell you what you actually went through. So you had to just, again, be fully prepared, fully confident in yourself, and patient with the guy, because he was going to make you as uncomfortable and nervous and anxious as he possibly could. And then if you didn't sweat, you just kept going and believed in what you said. And you knew your part about personnel. It was a no-brainer. I got hired, and those were the most influential years of my career, was with the Raiders, because that man has more knowledge. He's forgot more football than I've ever known. And, to have that as a resource to pick from every day, for basically 9 years. It was crazy.
Coach, your biggest moment in football?
It's different. If you ask me football wise, the biggest moment, it was obviously kickoff on Super Bowl 37 in San Diego, California, because you've reached that goal that you want to get to. It wasn't the finish of the game, because obviously we got our butts kicked by Tampa Bay, but to get there and to see the flash bulbs go off as the kickoff, as the kicker hits the ball, it's just a phenomenal experience. We were unfortunate because we were the last team to play with only 1 week between the AFC Championship game, NFC Championship game, and then the Super Bowl. Now, since then, there's been 2 weeks. So you have a week to prepare, then a week to enjoy kind of the atmosphere around the Super Bowl, and then go play the game. We were so hectic, and Mr. Davis was so thorough in everything he did. And then we had obviously the turmoil with our center going AWOL and all that stuff. It just led to a crazy week. So you never really, I don't even remember the week, to be honest with you, other than really your media obligations, because they were crazy. But the week itself went so fast, and the game's like a blink of an eye. That's how crazy those things are. So, but as far as biggest moments and proudest moments, it's years after. It's when your players call you, or you can pick up the phone and call your player, and man, they answer the phone, and you sit and you talk and you laugh, and your old peers that you coached with, your old head coaches, go visit them. Those are the moments that make football special, because it's the camaraderie that everybody misses when you get away from the game. It's not, believe it or not, it's not the game. It's not the competition. It's not the winning or losing. It's the camaraderie. Sure, you miss all those other things, but that camaraderie, that family atmosphere that you build is just, it's priceless.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there, Coach. I think that's one of the things this sport has taught me, is the bond between men. And there are women that are playing it, but it's that human bond that I really, really, really enjoy. Moving on to your European adventures, that's where I first met you, and blessed to have done that. How do you find the travel, the camps we've done in Ireland? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's priceless. I do believe that the NFL is making an impact by emphasizing NFL International. I don't think they're to the level that they need to be, but I think that the improvement, especially over the last 12 months, has really made a difference. But when you this is hard to say without sounding I don't even know what the word would be, but a little disheveled with what's going on here in the United States. But when you do a camp here in the United States, and I've told you this story, I've run camps that have had the top 100 players supposedly from the United States all come, and they've gone to the Nike camp, they've gone to the Under Armour camp, they've gone to the Army All-American game, then they came to the Pro Football Hall of Fame Academy. And there's just such a sense of entitlement in this country that they come and nobody wants to work. They just want to come and get the swag and walk around like big shots. And they've earned the ability to be one of these top 100, but they haven't earned that right. They haven't done anything yet in their lives. They're high school kids going to become college freshmen. And, that gets a little frustrating. On the contrary, when we go do these international camps, man, it is a breath of fresh air. And these kids will do anything you ask them to do. And if you make a critique, they take it as a positive critique. And all they want to do is get better. They're like sponges. And they will work until you tell them they're done. They won't ask questions. They'll just do it. And this past year, I mean, we had that one young man that got injured in our Ireland camp in Dublin. And I mean, you watched how those kids rallied around him, and it was killing him not to be on that field as he laid there on that table. And I mean, it's just special. There's something special. But the excitement, the hunger, the thirst for American football is so exciting. And it's not, again, about just the X's and the O's. It's about being the best version of yourself, the life lessons you can learn through football, and being able to spread those on a global basis is just incredible. So I love it. I cherish it, and hope we can continue to do more and more with this. So, and we've done it with the clinics. It's the same thing with the coaching clinics. We're spreading the word, hashtag sharing the knowledge, and talking about everything that is hope through football.
One of the things that I wanted to share with you is that you may not appreciate, but that first year you came over, one of the things that you exuded and showed was great organization in the sense that you were detailed. There were a lot of what you call speed bumps, but you showed that, and that rubbed off on the coaches because they were looking at somebody now who's new to a situation, but you compartmentalized everything and you got on with it. And I wanted to share this with you, that one of the lessons that I learned, and I know I go on about the speed bump with you, but there's a difference between being professional and personal when it comes to critique. And you're very, very professional when you critique. And if, in my case, if I took that personally, I wouldn't learn anything. You have to be professional. And that was one of the things. So, when you bring critique, be professional about it. Don't take it personally. Somebody's trying to help you get better. And that's something that you really kind of came across, and I wanted to share that with you. What advice would you give a young coach?
First thing is be humble and be a sponge, just like I just said. You want to learn everything you can learn about the game. As a young coach, you're so concerned about your performance and your players' performance that you get tunnel vision into only learning your portion of the game. Your linebacker coach, you want to have the best damn linebackers in your conference, in your league, whatever it may be, your division, and you get so focused on that, you may not really understand how your linebackers fit in properly with the defensive line or with the secondary, and you're missing the boat. So, yes, you want to be as good a position coach for your own position as you can be, but understand the whole concept. Be willing enough to sacrifice the time, the studying, the researching, turning every stone over to find out how everything fits together. And then once you start getting a grasp on that, reach it even further and understanding how offenses are looking at you, how you have to look at an offense and understand the strengths and weaknesses of everything you do on each individual play, game, series, whatever it may be. You want to master those things. And my final thing, Rick, and this, God, I wish I had known this earlier in my career. And I thought I did because, in 1994, when I went to work for Bill Belichick in Cleveland, he was such a stickler for the rules of the game and situational football and all the things, game management, clock management, that if something came up and you weren't sure about it, he'd give you a project. And it wouldn't just be an overnight project that you kind of Google something and go in and tell them what you found. You had to put together a PowerPoint. You had to put together clips, from any game you could find, and even practices, to back up your research on answering the question he gave you. And it could be a rule of the game. It could be a situation within the last 2 minutes. Whatever it was, you had to research the heck out of it. And then you presented it to the entire staff, because his belief was if you didn't know it or totally understand it, there's probably 4 or 5 other guys in the room that didn't either. And he wants you to present it. So not only did he challenge you as a coach, but then he challenged you to get better because you had to put a presentation on to everybody. And by doing that, you gained confidence from your peers. You gained respect from your peers. So, understand what you're doing and learn as much as you can. Be yourself. I mean, there's a bunch of things you could get into, Rick. I just think it's be yourself and be prepared, and then find the trigger points to get to your players. Being a great teacher, every kid learns differently. So you can't have one style of teaching and expect everybody to know it. There's the old Navy term, the weakest link in the chain, for your anchor. You don't want to be that You want to help everybody be equally strong.
Well, that leads me nicely on to the young Chuck Bresnahan. If you had to give one piece of advice, and this doesn't have to be football, but one piece of advice to the young Chuck Bresnahan, what would you have given?
Be a golfer. No, I'm only kidding. I think it would be stay humble, work hard, and respect others. Treat others the way you want to be respected. And I think as a young, up and coming professional, whether you're a coach, whether you're a businessman, you need to step back and really realize what you're going through and what everybody else is going through, and not be so focused on yourself. Be more open. Be grateful. Be a grateful person, and I think that's a real statement of who you are. I've got a good friend that did get to fly fighter jets and did get to be a Top Gun graduate and Top Gun instructor and a Blue Angel and all that type of stuff. And the Blue Angels have a phrase, "Glad to be here," and that really sticks in the back of my mind. That no matter what you do every day, you got to be glad to be there. And you got to find ways to be grateful. And if you can do that, you're going to be a good person.
Thanks, Coach. Now, on to the quick fire trivia questions. And you don't have to answer them if you don't want to. right? Your favorite food?
Seafood, sushi.
I thought, I had it in the back of my head you were going to say lobster, because I keep hearing about you and the lobsters.
I
So,
do. It's all seafood, but I love sushi. Love sushi.
yeah, fantastic. Favorite piece of music? Favorite song?
I don't know if I have a favorite song. I have, Springsteen is definitely somebody that I've always listened to, and if you want to pick me up, I'll put on anything with him.
Okay. Now, if I'm getting personal here, tell me where to go, okay? Mrs. B is a good-looking woman.
Yep.
What was your opening line?
It's called "I'm Out Punting My Coverage."
What did you say to her?
She picked me up.
Coach, it's been a pleasure. I love talking to you. You know that. I'm looking forward to our next visit, hopefully in Ireland together. And I'm very grateful that you've done this for us, for Coaches Lounge, and everything that you do to try to help develop us over here.
Hey, Rick, this has been absolutely awesome. I mean, these are the things that I think make a difference. And we have to continue to find ways and think outside the box to do little things like this to, I always say, in our clinics, I always say, look behind Coach Riq, #share the knowledge, the hope through football philosophy. If we can spread that around the world's a better place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Coach, thank you very much. We're going to end it here. And like I said, I look forward to us getting together again in the near future.